Okay. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining the session. And today is third session. And today we are going to mainly talk about inferential statistics. So, a quick summary, right? When we started with analytics, we talked about descriptive analytics and then predictive and prescriptive analytics. So descriptive analytics can be considered as nothing but the implementation of descriptive statistics. So for that we have covered like majority of the part in yesterday's session. Okay, so like summary statistics and descriptive statistics, what was that we covered yesterday. Today we are going to start with inferential statistics. So inferential statistics is the foundation of predictive and prescriptive analytics. Okay, so what we are going to learn about inferential statistics, starting from sampling distribution, the very basic concept from the entire, from where the entire inferential statistics starts. We are going to talk about various properties basically around sampling distribution and inferential statistics, including like expected value, confidence interval, standard error, level of significance, p-value. Okay, so these are very like fundamental things that we should be aware of if we are like utilizing statistical analysis for predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics. Okay, so we are going to start from the very beginning. So starting with the very first topic for today, inferential statistics. What is inferential statistics? So inferential statistics, before we talk about inferential statistics, firstly, let us quickly understand some building blocks of inferential statistics. So two most important things that we should aware of are population and samples. Okay, what is population? Very simply, I think you all should be aware of, population is nothing but our complete data set that we are interested in. Okay, so let us use the same example I think I was giving earlier as well. If I am supposed to calculate the average age of everyone in Mumbai, so what is going to be my population? The age information of each and everyone in Mumbai, that is my population. But is it accessible? Is it practical? Maybe not, right? So most of the time it happens that your population is either too large to analyze, or maybe sometime it is not accessible at all. Okay, I would like to give you one very famous incident, to understand this concept and digest it very well. And this was the incident from like 2015 somewhere, I think mid 2015, and it was related to Maggi noodles. Okay, so like there was a ban across the country on Maggi noodles due to what? Lead. So there is one content, I think MSG, right? So that content was present in Maggi noodles in excessive amount, in excessive proportion, which was like harmful for the consumers. So it was banned, right? And the entire production, everything got destroyed at that point in time. So if we try to imagine what would have happened, okay, at that point in time, so we can correlate it with inferential analytics very well. Okay, so let us imagine what would be their population. So they wanted to know the actual proportion of MSG in Maggi, right? That is what, like, maybe facile. Okay, they, when they audited their maybe factories, their production units, what they were be interested in, they wanted to know what is the actual proportion of MSG present in Maggi. Now how can they determine it? Because Maggi is not something like which is already produced, okay, and now they are just distributing it. It is batch processing, right? They are producing it on daily basis, they are producing it across the units, across the factories, right? So in this scenario, our population is something which actually doesn't exist. Okay, it's a batch processing, and like one batch can be different than other, right? The output of one factory can be different than other, right? So if they want to make any conclusion about the entire population, like across the Maggi, like, okay, it is generic statement for all the Maggi products across the country, what they will do, they don't have any choice other than taking samples. Okay, so what they would have done, they have taken maybe samples from varieties of sources. They have taken some samples from their some production units, from their warehouse, from their retail suppliers, from the markets. Okay, so maybe they have collected samples from as many sources as possible. Okay, and that is what sampling, that we call as sampling. So what is sampling? Firstly, first point, sampling is nothing but when you want to make the conclusion, or when you want to maybe verify or validate the conclusion about the overall population, you take some random sample. Very importantly, you want to take some random samples from your population, and using those samples you try to validate, verify, or maybe prove some hypothesis about the whole population. Okay, about the whole data population. That process of taking random samples from the population is known as sampling. Okay, now it is the starting point of inferential analytics or inferential statistics, taking random samples from the population and using those samples to make the conclusion about the overall population. So what is inferential statistics? Inferential statistics is nothing but that only when you are trying to make some conclusion that extends the current sample that you have. Okay, and rather than that current sample, you are making some conclusion about the whole population. That is known as inferential statistics. Some people call it point estimation, parameter estimation. These are like different flavors of inferential statistics only. So we will talk about point estimation, parameter estimation little bit later. Okay, coming to the second point, sampling distribution. So in order to understand the working principle of sampling distribution, sorry, inferential analytics, you will have to understand sampling distribution. So sampling distribution is very important to understand. So rather than like going through the definition or something, let us talk, or let us try to understand it a little bit practically. So let me switch to camera view. Okay, so I hope you should be able to see my screen well. Okay, is it visible? Okay, so for example, here comes our population. Okay, here is our imaginary population. Let us assume this is the Maggie population. Okay, so here in this population we have what? We have bought maybe all the Maggie products, all the samples of Maggies across the country. In each and every packet, there will be some proportion of MSG present, the preservative. Okay, maybe those packets who are produced by particular unit or factory, for them it is going to be exactly same, right? But those who are produced in different factory, they can show some different pattern, right? And those who are produced in different batches, maybe from the same factory but from different batches, they can also show some different pattern. So basically this proportion is something which has got some variability, and in reality whenever you are going to analyze your population, that fact is going to be there. Okay, so this concept is known as sampling variability. When you take multiple samples from the same population, different samples are going to show you different statistical property. This concept or this problem is known as sampling variability. So let me explain it to you. Okay, so suppose according to the standard, the prescribed or allowed proportion of MSG in Maggie is 10 ppm. Okay, like 10 parts per million. I'm just using some random figure and numbers. Okay, but let's assume the allowed limit is 10 ppm. So what the objective of the company would be, or the intention, their purpose would be, by producing Maggie, they want to be there in this limit, right? So they will say, okay, we are working on the hypothesis that the average proportion of MSG in our product is always less than or equal to 10 ppm. Okay, that is what their hypothesis they believe in, and that is what our hypothesis we believe in, because before that particular incident we were eating Maggie very well, right, without any questions, right? So we were like following this assumption. Okay, this is the reality that MSG is present well within the limit and it's not harmful for us, right? Then suddenly, like that let us assume FSSAI, they have got into the picture and they have audited them. So whenever you want to check or you want to verify a fact or some hypothesis, about data population, this concept is known as what? Hypothesis testing, right? So you are testing a hypothesis. Now this is a null, this hypothesis that everyone believe in, or the hypothesis which is like current explanation or current theory about a given phenomena is known as null hypothesis. So this is what null hypothesis, because we used to believe in that hypothesis till that point in time. Whenever you are performing any hypothesis testing, the most important thing you need is an alternative hypothesis. So what you will do, maybe you will, or the FOSSI, they have come up with an alternative hypothesis. We call it H1. Okay. And they are saying that, okay, we suspect that in your product, MSG proportion is more than 10 ppm. What is this? Alternative hypothesis. Okay, so whenever you want to prove a null hypothesis or validate a null hypothesis, you come up with an alternative hypothesis. This is my alternative hypothesis. Okay, now I have to perform the hypothesis testing, or maybe I am working on inferential statistics only here, because hypothesis testing is one of the direct application of inferential statistics. Okay, so what I will do, this is my population, and from this particular population I have got multiple samples. Okay, I have taken sample 1, I have taken sample 2, and very similarly I have taken sample n. Okay, this distribution or this sampling that I am showing to you is actually sort of little bit imaginary work. Okay, so suppose I have taken here maybe 1 million sample. I'm not saying that we are taking these many samples in reality. Okay, just to understand this concept, let us assume that I have taken 1 million Maggie samples from this population, with each and every sample with some sample size, let us say 35. So in my one sample, I'm going to have how many products of Maggie or packets of Maggie? 35. Okay, so far so clear? So I have taken these many 1 million samples. For each and every sample, I am going to now calculate the average proportion of MSG in each and every sample, because sample is nothing but again collection of Maggie, 35 Maggie products maybe. So in the language of statistics, it is represented by X bar. We call it sample mean. Sample means in statistics always represented by X bar. So I will say my X1 bar is suppose 12 ppm. Okay, my X2 bar is suppose 13 ppm, and so on. Like suppose my X3 bar is suppose 9 ppm. Okay, my X4 bar is suppose 16 ppm, right? I have taken such samples, like 1 million such samples. Now what will happen if you try to imagine what will happen when I take 1 million samples? It is possible that for some of the samples, sample mean is going to be repeated, right? So what will happen? Like maybe for some values, like 12 ppm, I have got maybe 20,000 such samples for which the sample mean was exactly or near around 12 ppm. Okay, I have got like 30,000 samples for 13 ppm. Okay, I have got some, and on the other side, like some values are going to be very common. Okay, very common, like X1 bar, X2 bar. On the other side, maybe some values are going to be very rare. Okay, like 9 ppm, 16 ppm. This type of values are present hardly for like 2 samples or maybe 1 sample. Okay, what I'm going to do now, using all these X1 bar, X2 bar, X3 bar and all, I'm going to draw a probability distribution plot. Okay, so I have got here what on x-axis? On x-axis I have got X bar. Okay, on y-axis I have got probability or maybe frequency. Okay, now my X bars are going to be like this. Now there will be some X bar value, maybe like 12 ppm. Okay, we will notice that frequency or probability is maximum. Okay, and for other values like maybe 13, 14, 15, 16, it is going to be drastically dropped. In the very similar way, for other value like 10, 9, 8, 7, it is going to drop, right? So we are going to get some values somewhere like 11, 12, 13. Let us assume our probability, our proportion is going to be highest, and probability is decreasing whenever we are either moving from mean value to this direction and from this mean value to this direction. So what we are doing over here, we have got 1 million values of x bar. Using all those x bars, we have calculated mean, because the middle value, like it looks like a normal distribution only. Okay, it is actually proved using central limit theorem. So a quick introduction to central limit theorem. What central limit theorem says, like you must have heard it, or you must have studied it using your high school or maybe your engineering. So central limit theorem says that whenever you are taking the random samples with sufficient sample size from your population, and whenever you are going to draw a distribution using those sample means like this, your sampling distribution, this distribution is nothing but known as sampling distribution. Okay, so this distribution is going to follow approximate normal curve. This is like one of the very famous of theorem of statistics, and this is the like the foundation of you can say machine learning or inferential statistics. So automatically I don't know the probability distribution of my population. Maybe my original population distribution is like this. Okay, there are two more most frequent value. Okay, maybe one value is 11 and one value is 14. So my original, in reality, Maggie's MSG population distribution may be like this. Okay, but when I am going to take multiple samples using those sample means, when I am going to create a sampling distribution like this is going to be a normal distribution. This is nothing but proven by central limit theorem. Okay, now if this is normal distribution, then our life is going to be very easy, because I don't know the equation of this curve, right? But I know the equation of this curve. If I know the equation of this curve, I can do all sort of probabilistic analysis using this curve, but not using this curve. Okay, that is the application of central limit theorem. So come back to this point. Okay, so what I was saying, that we have got this probability distribution that we have got by plotting the sample means from all the different samples. This is known as sampling distribution. And then we have calculated the sampling mean, and this mean is coming over here near value like 12 ppm. Okay, this is our imaginary sampling distribution. Okay, so this is what, or this is going to happen when actually Maggie is trying to follow, suppose this 12 ppm limit. Now let us, I'm changing the figure because I have drawn the figure like this. Okay, so let us revise our null hypothesis. Our null hypothesis is that average proportion of MSG should be less than 12. Okay, and alternative hypothesis is it is more than 12. So if Maggie is following the norms, the compliance with all the restrictions, and if we are going to take the samples in reality, we are going to get a sampling distribution like this. Okay, where the mean is always going to be around 12 in most of the cases, even though a little sampling variability is there, but their mean should come around 12 only if they are following the process. Okay, so far so clear? Or any question from anyone? Any question from Bangalore, Hyderabad or Pune? Guys, please feel free to ask your questions.
So I have a doubt.
Sure.
On the first day we learned about the linear equation, right? You said that this second or third order of this curve is not possible. So we were trying to, in regression, we were trying to find the approximate line. So is it similar to that, like exact curve is not known, so we are assuming that this is the normal distribution curve?
No, it is slightly different than that. Okay, so that concept is related to finding the relationship and defining that relationship with the help of some mathematical equation. Now we are performing what? Distribution analysis. Okay, like I have got one variable, suppose x variable. That time we are performing a bivariate analysis, where you have one variable independent variable, another variable dependent variable, and we were interested to know their relationship. Okay, bivariate relationship using regression analysis or using whatever, right? This is what a sort of univariate analysis. I have got just one variable, and what is that variable? MSG proportion. Okay, so I have just one variable. So this is what? Univariate analysis. And here what the distribution pattern is. Like the probability distribution, we talked about it yesterday, right? Probability distribution is what? If I am going to draw the probabilities against the various possible values of my random variable, that is probability distribution. So that is what I have drawn over here, right? What is this? This is nothing but on x-axis MSG, possible MSG proportion, on y-axis probability. This is what probability distribution plot only. So what we are doing? Distribution analysis. Okay. Okay. So coming to that point. Now suppose this was the alternate. Sure. Tell me.
Based on this curve,
Mhm.
so if we are going to take a new sample altogether, like the sample we're
Mhm.
talking about, so this probability will tell, like say, I want to find like what is the probability that the sample will have, say,
This much mean.
yeah, this much of ppm.
Mhm.
So based on this like integration you did yesterday, will
Yeah.
come to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I will come to that point actually to explain it even better. Okay, so now this is something which is assumed. This is all assumed. Okay, so now what FSI will do, they have to verify this hypothesis, this null hypothesis. What they are going to do? They are going to assume this assumption. This is the reality for them. Okay, because Maggie is making that claim like our proportion is less than 12 ppm. Okay. So now what they will do, they are not going to take like 1 million sample. They will simply take one sample. Okay, they will take one sample large enough, maybe with n value 50. Okay, in statistics, like n value 30 is known as the sufficient value for performing any sort of hypothesis testing. There is a theory behind that and a story behind that, so maybe we can talk about that later. But anything like more than 30 is considered as sufficient, okay, for performing hypothesis testing. So they will take only one sample, right? They will not take like 1 million sample. Now what they will do, using this sample, they have calculated what? Sample mean. Suppose their sample mean x bar is coming as 16.5 ppm. Okay, so when they have taken that sample and they have calculated the sample mean, their sample mean is coming as 16.5 ppm. Okay, now they will use this ideal sampling distribution curve to verify if Maggie is lying or not. Okay, so they will say, okay, let us say they are not lying, they are following all the norms. Then where is the 16.5? This 16.5 is going to be present maybe here. This is 16. This is going to be 16.5. Okay. So now you answer me this question. Suppose this sampling distribution is actually the reality. If that is the reality and you are going to take a sample from this population, so what is the most probable case for sample mean? What would be the most probable sample mean value you will have?
Near 12.
Near 12, somewhere near 12, right? So basically it can be like here, like this, maybe from 11.5 to 12.5. Okay, let us take one standard deviation range. So it is going to be like minus one standard deviation from 12 up to plus standard deviation, one standard deviation of the 12. Okay, in hypothesis testing, we actually allow the label of 1.96 standard deviation around the mean. 1.96 standard deviation. Okay, how that number has come, there is again a theory about it. Okay, so maybe you are interested, you can read about it. But the idea here is, if you are following the norms and if you are not wrong, then whatever the case will be, you should not cross this limit, right? You are allowed to go like from 12 to 16 or maybe from 12 to 8, but ideally your sample mean should be present in this range from 8 to 16. For example, I'm just using random numbers. Okay, so if my sample mean is coming as 16.5, can anyone tell me why, when it can happen?
When the hypothesis is like false.
Okay, exactly. And when the hypothesis or null hypothesis is going to be wrong, then what is the conclusion? What will happen?
Samples are having more than.
Yes. So basically, my sampling mean, my mu is not 12. Maybe my mean is 15. My mean is 15, and then my sample mean or sample mean is coming 16.5. It is like slight deviated, right? So because my overall mean is not 12, due to that reason, my sample mean is coming way far away from the reality or from the from the hypothesis mean. Okay. So due to that reason, I am coming here, and in the language of statistics, this area beyond this limit, okay, to the right hand side, and this area beyond this limit, yeah, to the left hand side and to right hand side, this is nothing but known as level of significance. Okay, it is denoted by alpha. Okay, so in some cases we perform like one del test. So like in this case of Maggie example, we have got like less than sign, which means that Maggie is saying MSG is less than 12. If suppose MSG is going to be 7, then are we going to be concerned? Like, I will not eat Maggie because MSG is 7. No, right? If MSG is going to be even 0, I'm not going to be concerned, right? So basically, this is an example of one del test. Here we don't have alpha. Okay? Because we are not eating Maggie because we want to eat MSG. No, we are eating MSG because we want to eat Maggie. So MSG is not good thing we are concerned about, right? We don't bother about it. So we don't have a like a danger zone or confidence level of significance here. So all we have our danger zone or level of significance here. So our entire alpha is going to be here. And in statistics, generally this alpha is taken as 5%. What do we mean by 5%? 5% means no matter what the scenario is, but my sample should not belong to the extreme 5% samples. Got it? Like if I am following the norms, if I am following the rules, my sample should belong to this rest of the 95% sampling population, not this extreme 5%. If my sample is coming in this extreme 5%, then null hypothesis is wrong. Okay, there is some problem with null hypothesis. If my sample is coming anywhere inside this 95% interval, that means my null hypothesis is still valid. Okay, and I'm getting some number which is around the mean or maybe less than the mean, because they are claiming what? They are claiming it is less than 12 ppm. They are not claiming it is equal to 12 ppm. They are saying it is less than. The less than can be anything. It can be 0 as well. Okay. So in the language of statistics, this allowed region or this allowed area of 95% is known as what? Anyone? Confidence interval, CI. Okay. So this is known as confidence interval. So what is the conclusion over here? The conclusion over here is, when like first I have audited Maggie and they have got the sample mean, their sample mean is present inside this danger zone. So they rejected this null hypothesis and said that no, there is definitely something wrong and you are not following the norms. Because no matter what, how the fluctuation will be or how much the deviation will be, it will not be that much, 16.5. It should be at least till 16. Okay. So let me clear this mass a little and then we can discuss the things, more things. Any questions so far from anyone? Okay. So let us see what we have covered so far. Okay, so inferential statistics, we are aware of that now. Okay, sampling distribution, this was the distribution. The distribution of sample means is nothing but sampling mean. Okay, It is going to look like this. Okay, what happened to that? Okay, so it's going to look like this, right? Okay, so from central limit theorem, when you are going to, maybe come up with the mean or distribution of the sample mean, it is known as sampling mean, and according to central limit theorem, it is going to follow approximate normal curve. Some naming convention about the sampling distribution. Okay, so sampling distribution is going to follow a normal distribution curve. Now, the mean of sampling distribution is represented by mu x bar. Okay, it is represented by mu in the subscript x bar. This is known as sampling mean. Okay, so we have one thing which is population mean. Population mean is always represented by mu. Population standard deviation is represented by sigma. Sample mean is represented by x bar. Sample standard deviation is represented by small s. Sampling mean is represented by mu x bar, and sampling standard deviation is represented by sigma x bar in the subscript. Okay, so these are the 6 symbols followed universally. Okay, so whenever if like you are going to some articles, some materials, books, okay, you have come across these symbols like mu, sigma, x bar, s. Without thinking twice, you can follow these norms. Okay, like mu means population mean as far as it is not defined explicitly otherwise. Okay, x bar means sample mean, small s sampling sample standard deviation, mu in the subscript x bar is sampling mean, and sigma and in the subscript x bar is sampling standard deviation. Okay, having said that, okay, I disturbed the camera. Okay, expected value of sampling mean. So we have already covered this. This is what is known as sampling mean. In another language, or it has got one more name, which is known as expected value. Now, can anyone tell me why it is known as expected value? Very simple, right? If your population mean is mu, then according to sampling distribution, this is going to be the value which is going to be very expected match of this population mean. Okay, so when you are going to take millions of sample means, and when you are going to draw the distribution, like this is like average of average, mean of mean. Firstly, we have taken a lot of sample means, and then for using those means, we have again calculated sample. So it is what? Mean of mean. This is going to be the most expected value for your population distribution. That's why it is known as expected value. Okay, now this there is a relationship between expected value and the sample size. Okay, so for example, if your sample size n is going to be very small, maybe 5 for example, what will happen when you take a sample with this little sample size? Your sampling variability will be very high, right? Sometime your sample mean can say 5, sometime your sample mean can say 20. Okay, so due to that reason, if you want to get more accurate result, try to use more value of sample size. And it is understood that the sigma x bar is inversely proportional to the square root of sample size. There is a relationship between sample size and the sampling standard deviation. So if your sample size is going to be more and more, bigger and bigger, your standard deviation is going to be less and less. And are we concerned about the standard deviation of sampling distribution? No. Why no? Because even if our sampling standard deviation is going to be very small number, what will be the impact? Our sampling distribution is going to look like this. Okay, a very tiny tall curve. Okay, and because my standard deviation is very minimum. What is the standard deviation here? Standard deviation is the representative of sampling variability. If standard deviation is minimum, means sampling variability is minimum. What is sampling variability? A sort of error in your estimation. So if my standard deviation is minimum, means my estimation error is minimum. Due to this reason, sampling standard deviation is also known as standard error of the mean. Okay, so in reality, what we try to do whenever we are performing maybe sampling distribution, in ideal case, we expect sampling standard deviation to be minimum, because we are trying to make the sampling error to be minimum or sampling variability to be minimum, and this is the representative of error. That's why it is known as standard error. Okay, that is also one of the very important concept. In many times interviews, this question has been asked: what do you understand by standard error? Okay, so like anyone who has used maybe R language for regression analysis earlier. Okay, so whenever you like implement, like you have used, right, most of the people, mostly. So whenever you use R and you implement like regression using R, can you see those statistics like T score, standard error, p value? Those are that. Okay, so can you tell me what is the null hypothesis at that point in time when you work on regression analysis? What is the null hypothesis for which those values are there? Like if we have p value, if we have a standard error, t statistics, they are going to be for some null hypothesis, right? So whenever we work on regression, our null hypothesis is that there is no impact on target variable y because of given independent variable x. Or in simple words, we can say that our null hypothesis is there is no direct correlation between this independent variable x and dependent variable y. Your t statistics is going to be nothing but the score of t distribution corresponding to your sample correlation value, and your p value is going to be corresponding cumulative probability. I will come to p value. Okay, so I was just like discussing with them, so don't worry, I will come to p value and all. Okay, so what we were saying that our mu is going to be the most expected value, sampling mean, and sampling standard deviation is going to be the estimation of the error. Okay, okay, so we have covered this much so far. Now comes the most important thing, p value. Okay, confidence interval I have already explained. What is confidence interval? Level of significance alpha I have explained. Now comes the p value. Okay, very important concept, so let us try to understand this now. Okay, so okay, so maybe I can use this diagram. Not sure if I will have to switch to otherwise camera na? Okay, let it be, I can draw it here. So I'm going to again use that Maggie example, okay? And let us conclude this hypothesis testing using p-value. Okay, this is our actual or theoretical value of MSG, okay? 12 ppm, okay? Now let us assume here we have alpha, okay? What is alpha? Level of significance, and we expect that our sample mean x bar should not present here. Okay, now let us assume this limit is 16. Okay, let me switch the view. Hey, remind me whenever I forget to switch the view. Okay, okay, so this is our theoretical value of MSG proportion in Maggie, 12 ppm. This is the last or maximum value, 16 ppm, beyond which we have level of significance alpha. Alpha here is 5%. Okay, this is nothing but this entire limit from maybe minus infinite to 16 is known as confidence interval. Okay, so we expect that our sample mean x bar should be present somewhere here, not here. Okay, so when they have like calculated their sample mean, the actual sample mean that Fasai has taken, They have got the value is 16.5. Okay, so 16.5 is present here. Let us assume 16.5 is present over here. Okay, now for this 16.5, what we do in hypothesis testing, we calculate this cumulative probability. What is this cumulative probability? This cumulative probability can be defined as the cumulative probability of getting any sample with sample mean 16.5 or more than that. What is this probability? This is the probability that if you are going to select a sample from the population randomly, that sample is going to have sample mean 16.5 or maybe more than that, right? This probability is known as p-value, as simple as that. Okay, this is what we call as p-value. Like for your sample, you are going to firstly calculate, okay, what is the probability I can get this sample or even maybe more extreme sample given null hypothesis is true. If null hypothesis is true, then your probability is going to be this much, and this entire probability is 5%. Okay, can you see this bigger area? This bigger area is 5%. So maybe this will come to be like maybe 3.5% or something. What does it mean? If your p-value is 3.5%, which means that if you are following the null hypothesis and still I'm going to take a sample from your Maggie population and my sample is coming as 16.5, it can happen only in 3.5% cases that I can get a sample like this or even more extreme sample with sample mean 17, 18, 19, 20. So even if I consider all those sample, this probability is hardly 3.5%. So at the last step of hypothesis testing, we compare alpha with p-value. And we say that if alpha is more than p-value, we reject the null hypothesis. Okay, which is in this case, which would have happened in Maggie's case. Okay, now if alpha is less than p-value, suppose my sample mean is coming here, right? Like 14 ppm. For 14 ppm, when I calculate this area under the curve or cumulative probability, this probability is going to come way higher, maybe like 19%. So I will say my p-value is more than 19%, is more than 5%. So whenever your p-value or cumulative probability is going to be more than level of significance alpha, you have to accept the null hypothesis. So you will say, okay, their null hypothesis is correct. Whatever they are claiming is correct claim. Okay. So whenever you are accepting the null hypothesis, we call this as a negative result. Okay. Like mostly in healthcare, like healthcare, you know, positive word is used in very negative sense, right? Like if someone is saying you, okay, you are cancer positive, okay, like you are TB positive, okay. So very similarly here as well, if we are saying hypothesis results are positive, what does it mean? Null hypothesis has been rejected, okay, their claim is wrong. If someone is saying hypothesis results are negative, which means it's a good news, whatever you are saying, it is right. Okay, so that is like you know, entire base of inferential statistics. Now a very quick maybe 2-minute summary how this is all relevant to machine learning. Okay, so maybe this is all theory, right? So how this is related to machine learning. So one example that I was giving to them, whenever you are working on any sort of machine learning model, maybe parametric approaches, at that point in time, we are going to be interested in knowing the correlation between your independent variables and dependent variables, right? Majority of the time. At that point in time, we make some conclusion. Okay, this variable is significant or not. Should I include this feature in my model or should I not include this feature in my model, right? So every time there is going to be a hypothesis test for each and every pair of independent and dependent variable in background. You are not doing that, but R is doing that, for example, or Python is doing that. Okay, so they are going to, like, Python directly doesn't give you, you know, that statistics, but R gives that statistics. Okay, as soon as you build the model, so it is going to then give you those numbers. Okay, like when you are performing the calculating the correlation between x1 and y, your correlation is like maybe 19%, corresponding to 19% the z score. Okay, what is z score? Maybe we can talk about later, but it is like the the probability, how probable it is when there is no correlation between these two variables. Okay, so they will return you z score, they will return you standard error of the mean. Okay, they will return you like these numbers. Using that these numbers, you decide if this variable is significant and should be included in my model or not. Okay, so that is how in machine learning we are doing this. That is how in many cases we perform hypothesis testing. Like I can remember one of my projects 3-4 years back where we were supposed to perform the hypothesis testing for the lawyers, okay, like attorney in US. So for one of my client, they were like taking services from all the attorneys across the world. And like in standards, there are some standard rates, some fixed rates. Like if you are appointing a counselor, what should be the charges of counselor in a particular state of US. Okay, what is the charges of a paralegal, what are the charges or standard rate of a junior attorney. Okay, but these are the norms, these are the standards. Okay, but it is not mandatory that that legal firm or that the firm which is providing the outsourcing of lawyers, they are following the same standard, right? They can charge you a little bit higher, they can charge you a little bit less than the standard. So what we used to do is we used to perform a lot of hypothesis testing at that point in time, and we used to basically calculate the like these attorney rates or these rates of counselor, senior counselor, how different they are from the standard rate presents in market. Okay, like these rates are one standard deviation away from the average rate or market rate, or two standard deviation away. And whenever like they are in danger zone, we used to inform those legal firms explicitly, like, boss, what are you doing? Like standard rates are like maybe 300 or 700 USD per hour, you are charging us 1200 for senior attorney, right? So you are like definitely misusing the guidelines. Okay, you are not following the guidelines, something like that. So this is also one of the practical use case where you can directly use hypothesis testing that we used to do. Okay, so here I can conclude our session. So let me know if there is any questions, any queries from anyone. So anyone from Bangalore, Hyderabad? We don't have any questions today from anyone else from Hyderabad and Bangalore. Do we have anyone from Hyderabad and Bangalore join this session today? Okay. Okay, so if we don't have any questions, then we can call it for the day. Thank you, everyone. And I think the next session is going to take place probably next week. Okay, so we don't have any session tomorrow. Okay, I think you will get the mailer from Neelam or HR. Okay, bye. Thank you.